So we are now going to go to the last presentation of today, which Connie and I will do together, and that is the privacy training that is required by the grant that we give to you, and is one of the main reasons why we're taping this webinar. So Connie?
Thanks, Kelly. I wanted to clarify, since we're talking about some things being voluntary and some things being not, in case all of this, since a lot of this is new information, it could get a little confusing. And as Kelly said, the participants' willingness to give information is voluntary, and I'm sure that was part of this review too, in order to comply with all the privacy requirements and ethical practices. What's not voluntary for the grantees in particular is all of these processes: the use of the new forms, the participation in this training, the staff non-disclosure forms, and the script. And we're hoping that everyone else who's on the collaborative will follow all of the same process as well. But again, if anyone has a problem with concern about participating, contact me and we will talk afterward. But the part that's voluntary is what the participant wants to provide in terms of their personal and health related information. Okay, thank you. This one we kind of touched on a higher level. Again, that privacy law, or Privacy Act of 1974, which they're wanting to comply with, and again is more some of the other areas beyond health. And this is really, it really is important in this digital age. Kelly was just saying that even without a name, and some of the other kinds of types of data that we collect, we can identify who the person is. Any of you who've been victims of identity theft can be are cognizant of that as well. And so things like social security number, other identifying numbers, anything that could identify the person. There's a little bit more information about that in one of the subsequent slides. But they wanted us to communicate what the act, why the act was originally created, and I kind of went over or alluded to that before, but it's about computerized databases dating back to 1974 that could impact people's privacy rights, which are, have expanded exponentially these days in terms of the amount of information that's available to people. Requires government agencies such as ours, as well as the federal agencies that provide our grant funding, to make sure people know what information we have, to follow fair information practices. It restricts how agencies can use individuals' data, and we could all be sued if we don't. So there's the motivation right there. You can go to the next one. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the personal identifiable information is what they're concerned about here. It's a bit different from the PHI, which is what we usually talk about, the personal health information that is regulated by HIPAA. So this is the other kinds of information that that we're needing to make sure that we protect. So I believe Kelly talked a little bit more about how to protect that, but it does involve access, disclosure, theft, loss, and disposal. And this is one of their slides, NCOA slides. It repeats some of what I said earlier, but I think I changed my slide to include volunteers, but anyway, just to make sure that all of those individuals, as well as volunteers, anybody who's handling this kind of information is required to have the training. Basically, everybody's getting the same package of training. This is what we're going over today. But NCOA with this slide was kind of highlighting what's most important for the different individuals depending on what they handle. So program coordinators, leaders, all of that will have the access to the information about rights of individuals, appropriate protection, storage and transfer, and then people like, I think probably in a lot of cases it's the same people completing data entering, data transfer, that need to be aware of storage, transfer, destruction, etc. This isn't really crucial for you to focus on because, again, we really want everybody to know all of it, aspects of this training. This is just more where various people would be applying this information based on their role. Again, I kind of referred to this earlier, but again, there's two types of information covered by the Privacy Act and now HIPAA. Sensitive information, anything that would involve loss of confidentiality, integrity, that could be expected to have a serious or severe catastrophic adverse effect on organizational operations, assets, or individuals. And then the protected health information that we have talked about a bit before. I really encourage people, I think that everybody's aware of these things, but having been trained in multiple government agencies about how easy it is to access its information and connect the dots to identify somebody, we do need to be very, very careful about that. On a separate note, which I may address in another conference call or may have our HIPAA person come talk to us about, is that there are new HIPAA regulations that increase liability of organizations that contract with others who don't comply with HIPAA in particular. So it's there's in addition to the concerns we have about our participants, we also need to be aware that we are at risk and liable if we don't comply with these laws and someone's identity is compromised and they come back and follow a lawsuit. This gives you a more detailed list that they provided of the personally identifiable information. What they've highlighted in red are the more typical types of data that you all would get, because I don't think you're collecting Social Security number for this program or some of the other information that's listed there. But that is, they did want to highlight for you and us what's included in the Privacy Act. And I included this, we've really kind of gone over this, but I just, for purposes of the training, and I wanted, and for you all to have access to this after the fact, in case you have questions, I wanted to provide this slide, that it includes education, financial transactions, medical history, criminal employment history, anything that can be used to distinguish identity, name, so date, place of birth, mother's maiden name, etc. So medical history, if we go back to that, and it's more of a history, but anything related to health is something that you all are dealing with. The fact that somebody's taken the class, the fact that they tell you they've got diabetes, whatever, all of those are very important for us to protect the people. I think this goes back to Kelly then on, or was I supposed to cover that?
I think that's
all right. Do you have any questions for me before this goes back to Kelly about some of the logistics of how to do this? Okay, thank you.
all right. Okay, so this is just a reminder that, no agency or persons shall disclose any record by any means of communication to any person or other agency without written request or prior consent of the individual to whom the record pertains. So what they mean by any means of communication includes oral, phone, written, electronic. Of course, you have to send your information to Lori, and we'll get more into that detail in a minute, so if you want to go ahead. So when you are transferring any PII or private information, must always be treated as for official use only and must be marked accordingly. So this applies not only to the paper records, including emails, faxes, but must also contain the cautionary marking for official use only. So I'm not sure if we're doing that, but we need to start doing that. All records containing personal information need to be stored in a locked filing cabinet or other secure containers to prevent unauthorized access. So we do that here at the State Health Department. Once we receive that data, we keep it in a locked filing cabinet. However, we need to ask you to do the same in your agency before it's sent to us. Any electronic records, so if you send the data to us by email, it must be password protected, or if we store it as an electronic record, it must be stored in a password protected database, which is great news because the NCOA database that Lori uploads all this data to is password protected, so we are safe there. And it must be transferred via encrypted emails. So if you email Lori data, your email system needs to be encrypted. And if Lori emails data back to you, Lori's email system needs to be encrypted. So we will be taking care of that here on our end, and we ask that all of you take care of it on your end. Next slide, please. So when you are transporting this personal information or private information, if you're hand carrying it, put a sheet over it so that people don't see it. If you're using mail, just make sure it's in a manila or white envelope that doesn't have any window on it so that people could see it as it's being transferred in the mail. You need to mark that envelope to the attention of Lori, of course, and never indicate on the envelope that it contains personal or private information. If you're using email, as I indicated, you need to make sure that however you're storing that private information within your database, that database needs to be password protected. So if you're entering that information into your own database, just make sure that's a password protected database. Make sure you're using encrypted email when you send it to us or send it to Lori. Do not send any of this information to a personal home or unencrypted email address. And this is where you need to announce the for official use only. That FOUO needs to be in the opening line of text, but not in the subject line of the email. So they want to see that in the opening line of the text of your email. All right, next page, please. All right, so this really has, I think, more to do with the state since we're sort of the depository of this data, but if your organization collects this information on paper and then enters it into a database or into a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet is sent to us by encrypted email and you still have the paper copies at your office, you need to lock those up or you need to destroy them. And we'll get to this, I think it's on the next slide, but ACL has allowed us to destroy the data as soon as it's entered into the NCOA database. And so if you've put it on a spreadsheet and emailed it to us, and then we've entered that into the NCOA database, you may destroy this data as well. And when I say data, I'm talking about those three forms: the attendance log, the participant information survey, and the workshop information cover sheet. The consent form, non-disclosure form, those will be stored at the state for 3 years in a locked container. So those will not be destroyed. But as soon as this information is entered in the NCOA database, it can be destroyed. And so destroying means that it is unrecognizable and beyond recognition, and these are some of the disposal methods that are down below. And we'll be sure to destroy them appropriately here at the state by shredding. Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. So what are your roles and responsibilities, and what are our roles and responsibilities? I mean, this training is truly for all of us. We are all handling this data, that we take it seriously, we respect others' privacy, that we really take seriously this assurance that the email is encrypted, that we make sure we have consent forms in place for any personal information. So this consent form and participant information survey, they go hand in hand. There should not be one without the other. Well, I take that back. If on the consent form they indicate they don't want to give any information, there may not be a participant information survey. But if there's a participant information survey, there's always going to be a consent form. They have to go together. That we're not sharing any of this with individuals who are not authorized, that you have appropriate transfer, storage, and disposal products in place, and don't email anything to a personal home or unencrypted account. We reviewed this prior, just making sure that folks know when you're reading that script that they have the right to consent or refuse, that you're giving them a blank copy of the consent form. This third bullet, if a participant initially consents but then changes their mind, you can do one of two things. You can either destroy the original form and replace it with a new form indicating their refusal, or you can cross out consent on the original, initial it, and redate it. You need to collect all those participant consent forms, maintain them in a secure lock container until they're transferred to Lori. You need to maintain hard copies, and this is us. We need to maintain those hard copies at the state of the participant consent form for 3 years. And we need to do the same thing with the non-disclosure statements that you all fill out. Electronically scanned copies must be stored in a secure password-protected database for 3 years after the grant's end. All individuals involved in providing CDSME programs must sign a non-disclosure, as I've indicated. And like I said, at the state, when you send those to us, we will maintain those for 3 years in a locked storage area. Okay. All right, so when do you use the CDSME group leader script that you have to read? So they're recommending that it's at class 0 or pre-session if you have one, or at the start of session 1, or with any new participants who may start at session 2. So this just reviews what we talked about before when we talked about that group leader script. And that group leader script, you can just laminate that or keep a copy. We never need the group leader script. That's just for your own, that's for you. Okay, next slide, please. Again, just going over the importance of storing any completed forms in a secure lock cabinet before you send them to Lori. Then Lori will enter them in the CDSME database, and then she will destroy them in an appropriate way after they've been entered. But we will store the consent forms, and we will store any electronically scanned copies for 3 years. All right. Any questions before we move on to the short 4-question quiz? All right.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Melissa, and I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Questions, but, so if someone does not want to fill out a form, it looks like you're still supposed to have a form with something that says they're not, I mean, because when it says what to do if they change their mind, it says to redo the form with, I'm not clear. Do they do a form, or they just say I don't want to, and they don't have to do anything on the form?
Yeah, Lori, you want to escape? Let's get out of this slideshow and bring up that consent form again. So bear with us just for a sec. We're going to pull up the consent form. And that's one of the Word documents. Yep, okay. Okay, so at the very bottom of this, on the 3rd page, Laura, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down, this is what they're indicating. So if someone says, yeah, this seems fair enough, yeah, I've read it, check, I agree to allow my survey information, and I agree to allow my information to be shared for Medicare claims. But then, halfway through they say, I've thought about that, and I don't agree with having any of that shared. So that's when you would just cross that out, and you would initial it and say, no longer consent, and date it. We should always receive these consent forms regardless of if a participant information survey comes along with it or not. So let's say somebody reads, you've done the group leader script, they read through the consent form and they say, yeah, I've read it, but I do not want to share anything. Like, I know that right now. I'm not going to fill out this participant survey. I don't want my information shared with Medicare. So they just check the first one, I've read it, and then they sign it and say, that's it, I don't want anything else. So then this consent form would still come to Lori, but it would not be accompanied by a participant survey, but we would still need to keep this for 3 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead. Connie has a question. Go ahead.
If they're sending them to you and destroying them themselves on site.
The consent form?
Yeah.
So you would never destroy, oh, if you did that thing where they said that was, you had two options, either to cross it out and write, no longer consent with the date, then that would come to us, or you might destroy this consent form and then get a new consent form and indicate that they don't want to share anything. Then you would need to destroy and appropriately dispose of that consent form. But it might just be easier to cross it off and say they no longer consent and then send it to us. Any other questions?
I have a question, Ms. Tracy. When you were talking about sending information via encrypted email,
Yes.
do you have any recommendations on programs we should use if we don't already have something in place?
That's a good question. You work for Tepeyac, right? I would probably get with your, administrator or office manager, or, just see, because I'm assuming you all have some kind of encrypted system because of the work you do. I would see what they have for your clinic.
I think we have used encrypted systems before, but usually it's been with the other, like with the other partner, like if we have another partner that we have to pass data, usually they provide that for us.
Okay.
At least for the programs that I work with, and then as far as, I guess I can definitely check and see if there's anything else on the clinical side. And we're just currently doing, getting ready to go live for EHR, electronic health records, in like 2 weeks. So maybe there's something there that I don't know, but I will check. Yeah,
check it out, Tracy. And do you usually email or do you mail this information to Lori?
I like to email.
You do email. Okay. So yeah, definitely check it out. And if you have any more questions, you can give me a call. We'll talk through it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good point, though. The encryption needs to be in place for the person who's sending the sensitive information. So it would not work if you sent it from an unencrypted email to Lori and Lori's was encrypted. That's not how it would work. It needs to be encrypted on the end of the person sending it, not the person receiving it. Any other questions?
Charlie, this is Lindsay. Just a quick clarification. So for people that may not be able to get encrypted emails, they can obviously send hard copies to you.
You got it.
And they can then also mail me their hard copy of their attendance log.
Yep.
If they don't have that encrypted email. And I was not totally clear on faxing. How do we, because a lot of people like to fax, and that's completely fine on my end, and the fax goes right to Pat. So it's safe in terms of going right to Pat. It doesn't get cycled around our office. So is there anything else we need to be careful on regarding faxing?
That's a good question. Let me follow up with MCOA, and I'll get back to you about faxing, unless you know it.
Somewhere in this webinar that we had access to, I think that's where I saw that, it's that faxing, you can't read what's on a fax, but to make sure that it gets to the right person, it has a cover sheet, preferably that the person is there at the fax to pick it up, so that somebody who doesn't have authorization to get that information picks it up and tosses it somewhere where other people can access it. That's an important part of that as well.
Okay, so if the fax machine sits at Pat's desk, we should be okay, as long as it's had a cover sheet on it, right?
Is she the only one that picks those up?
Yeah.
Yeah, then that should be all right.
All right.
Perfect. So that's a great option for those people that don't have encrypted email. It's mail, and then the faxing. So this is good. We have different ways of doing this.
Yeah, and
too much consternation to anyone.
And Lori, do you receive faxes from folks?
I haven't.
Good.
No.
Okay. I would encourage. I mean, yes, we can make it work for faxing here, but our fax machine sits quite far from where Lori sits. So I'm glad to hear that nobody's faxing this to you. I would say let's keep it to either email or to mailing. I think that's going to be more secure. Any other questions?
This is Connie. I wanted to add one thing that I was thinking of when I am thinking of what people might be concerned about a participant when you're saying, will this information be shared with Medicare, and using the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, and the lights may go on that, oh no, this is you're gonna cut off my benefits if I tell you I'm taking this class. I don't see that on the script, but I would encourage people to say this doesn't have anything to do with their benefits. It won't affect their eligibility. It's completely separate, and they won't be identified in the database. Well, I guess they would be identified in the they could be identified in the database, but it won't affect their benefits or eligibility. I just want to also clarify. There isn't any of you who are dealing with prison populations, is there? Okay, I didn't think so. That's there's another issue there.
I'm sorry, this is Monica. Not currently, but we've kind of thought about having a class over there.
Okay.
So possibly.
Okay, good.
So talk to Connie.
Yeah, there's no problem with doing that, and we can touch base on the specifics, but basically some parts of this we can't use with the prison population, so some of what we've talked about today some of the process wouldn't be used. But so yeah, if you decide to pursue that, just let me know. There's no problem doing it. It's just that we have to have an extra layer of protection for them. So
Okay.
you can just get in touch with me, and we'll go through that at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So I'm just going to take a minute and review what needs to be sent to the state. Same old, workshop information cover sheet, attendance log, participant information form. But now you will also include the participant consent form and your non-disclosure agreement. And this non-disclosure agreement only needs to be signed once, but it needs to be signed by anybody in your agency that has anything to do with this protected private information. We will store the non-disclosure agreements. We will also store the consent forms. And we'll talk with Lindsay Blackwelder about how to let her know that we've received all of those non-disclosure agreements, because that will also be a part of the contract that you'll hold with her, or MOU rather. Any other questions? All right.
This is Kathy Knoll.
Please.
When do you want those non-disclosure agreements?
That's a great question. So next week I will get these forms all to Lindsay Blackwelder, and then she'll send them out to all of you. And then I would say, as soon as you want to start filling out the non-disclosure forms, please do. And as soon as you want to start using this process, please do. It has to be used starting January 1st. But we would encourage you to start using it now, so we can kind of work through any kinks and get it going smoothly. And then, of course, for folks that are offering this class in Spanish, you'll have to wait until January 1st for those folks, because we do not have any of this information translated yet. All right, let's go back to the quiz, Lori, if you don't mind just pulling up that third slide deck again. And we'll do these quick 4 questions, and so please write these down, and you'll be required to email Lindsay Blackwelder with your answers, but we will also give you the answers at the end. So this is more for just documentation that the folks on the call took this training and were not sleeping. So the first question: information about an individual that is unique or identifies or describes him or her, such as social security number, medical history, date of birth, home address, is called what? Give you a second to write that down. Okay, next question. Disposal methods may include all except burning, shredding, tearing in half and putting in the garbage can, or melting. So if you want to jot down your answer, go to the next question. The CDSME group leader script describes what participants will learn in the workshop, requests participants to share their birth date, address, and sex, explains how participants' privacy is protected and why data is collected, emphasizes that participants are required to complete all survey forms. So I'll give you a second here to jot down your answer. And we'll go to the next one. Signed participant consent forms must be maintained for 36 months, 60 months, 3 years after the grant period ends, the same length of time as tax return records are kept. So we'll give you a minute here to write down your answer. All right, so let's go to the answers. Number 1, it's called personal identifiable information. Number 2, please don't tear it in half, put it in the garbage can. Number 3 explains how participants' privacy, so the script explains how participant privacy is protected and why data is being collected. And then these forms, the consent form and the non-disclosure agreement, will be kept for 3 years after the grant period ends by the state in a locked container. All right, so please email those answers to Lindsay Blackwelder with to be proof of your having participated in this webinar. This webinar has been recorded, and we will put it up on, I think what we're going to do is put it up on the Diabetes Prevention Program Google site, because that's just a really easy site for me to upload webinars to. I think eventually it'll live on the CDSMP collaborative site, but for right now, just to get it up there so people can access it, I'm going to put it on the DPP site, and I will make sure Lindsay Blackwelder has the link to that with instructions of how to find it on that site, and make sure all of you receive it and all license holders in the collaborative receive it so they can watch it and you know, be counted and send their answers to Lindsay Blackwelder when it's all over. Lindsay, do you have anything to add, anything you want to say, Lindsay Blackwelder?
No, thank you. Excellent job, ladies. I appreciate the clarification. So just one final clarification is that, yes, I will send an email with that link that when Kelly posts it. That way, if you guys have questions and you want to go back and review it, you'll, of course, have the link. Those people that weren't present on the phone, I will be working with them to make sure they watch it and get me their quiz answers. And those of you that were on the phone today, you have your quiz answers, and go ahead and email those to me so that I can store that as proof that you actually did this webinar.
Yep. And then, like I said, I'll have all of these forms out to Lindsay next week, and then she'll make sure all of you have them. So if you want to start using this right away, we encourage you to do so, but it has to be done by January 1st. We have to be using these forms per the requirements of the grant that State Unit on Aging holds. So, any final questions?
This is Monica again, and I just have one question, and this is, I think, maybe towards with Lindsay Blackwelder, just to clarify things on my end. If we are having a workshop starting up, and we want to get it on the website, the chronic disease website, or the state, whichever website it goes on to, should we just email you the information, and then you'll get that in, or do we need to go to the website ourselves? Just to notify, people, you know, if they're looking for a class or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Good question. And this is something that was kind of covered. I sent an email this morning, just to remind your email, and it had that form on it. Remember that CDSMP class listing template?
Okay.
It's a 2-page document. So that was created by the CDSMP Collaborative. The reason being is that when you fill that out, it has all your agency-specific information on the first page. But then on the second page, it has kind of the specific class information. So you fill that document out, and then you email it to me, and then I'll give it to Lindsay at COA, and she is responsible, someone at COA, Lindsay, who gets all of that information up on the collaborative website, so that anyone that goes to that website can click on the calendar and they can see, oh, there's something going on in Boulder County. So that's the reason that to kind of propose your numbers for year 2, we're asking that everyone fill out one of those class listing templates for every single series that they are planning during year 2. So first of all, I can really see that you're planning and can really meet your numbers. Second of all, I can send that information to Lindsay at COA, and she can get it up on the website so that hopefully you'll get more people coming to your classes. Does that accurately answer your question?
Yes. Now, does that also include our diabetes
on the first page of that class listing template, there's it lists all the different classes, everything from CDSMP in Spanish and English, diabetes, Spanish and English, pain, arthritis, the HIV. So you can click whatever or check box whatever one it is, and then Lindsay will put that on the website appropriately so that they can clearly see, oh, this is CDSMP in Spanish. I really want to go to that one.
Okay, great.
I think everyone knows this, but the website is for all CDSMP classes, not just those under the grant. So any and all of you that are on the phone and involved with the CDSMP should be posting those so that everybody can see what's available.
Thank you all, and let me just, this is Lindsay McIntosh. Just so you know, we are getting requests from a couple of different repos, including Colorado Access. So the more information you can send us about your classes, the more likely we are going to be able to get people into those classes for you. So that's very important. Thanks.
This is Brittany. I have one quick question. Since I'm the program coordinator and kind of the middleman, I need to have all of my leaders watch this, correct?
Yes,
Or am I just going to inform them of all the changes?
they should watch it.
Okay, and that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you for clarifying.
Lindsay McIntosh, this is Monica, and we had talked about a fidelity person coming in to do a fidelity check here in Alamosa. And I just wanted to let you know that I think I've got one from Pueblo coming.
Wonderful.
And so we're taking care of on that.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you all. And thanks to those of you who've been in touch about setting up fidelity visits that sort of need a hand. One of the things that will kick back into place is we're in between the grant funding right now, so there isn't funding to pay those folks who are outside of your license to come in and do a fidelity visit. So thank you for your patience as we are between grants.
And this is Lindsay from AHEC. Thank you so much for bringing up fidelity. On that class listing template I was just talking about, there is actually a little checkbox you can check that states that you do need a fidelity check for that series. And then Lindsay from COA and myself can really help you to get that fidelity check lined up if you need assistance with that. So please check that box and make any comments if you do need some assistance with fidelity checks.
Cool.
Hey, this is Dawn. Something just occurred to me on fidelity checks. We just had one. COA came out and did one a couple months ago. And now we're going to have another class in February, which is 2014, so it's not 2013. Do we have to have yet another one that close together? Or
We can talk more about this, but it's on the work plan, that this sort of data piece. I'm thinking I'd like to start to pass to you. So next week I'll show you where the original webinar was for this that NCOA put out. And I just want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this webinar. I know that this is not the most exciting topic, and so I really appreciate your attention and your commitment to doing this the right way, and thank you so much. Connie, did you want to say anything?
Oh, no, I do appreciate everybody's attention to this. As we were going through this, I was just thinking of the number of times in my work and personal life where I've seen violations of these requirements. Is kind of amazing. And the liability is high. We get emails from our HIPAA person regularly about hundreds or lawsuits that are into the millions. So it's important. But I really appreciate everybody's attention to this and diligence in following everything, as I know you will. But any questions that you have on any of this, you can get with Kelly or me, and we'll do our best to respond to your questions.
All right, thank you all, and have a great weekend.